Welcome to the Microlife Cafe. I'm your host Sarah from Microlife Fertilizers. We're talking all things organic horticulture and beyond, so pull up a chair and pour up a cup with us. On today's episode, we're heading indoors. We are sitting down with the Flora Culture co-owner, Jem, who has built a community around the joy of growing things inside. From a beginner-friendly houseplants to the world of houseplant care, she's the person customers turn to when their leaves start drooping and their thumbs aren't quite as green as they'd hoped. We're talking about how Houston has fallen in love with houseplants, what it really takes to keep them thriving, and why feeding your plants the right way might be the missing piece you never knew you needed. Hello, Jem. Thanks for coming in today. Can you share with everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living?
Yes. So my husband and I own the Flora Culture. Matthew is my husband and he's brilliant, but he doesn't like to do any kind of public appearances, even if it's a podcast. So I'm it today. We own the Flora Culture. We have 2 retail stores here in Houston, Texas. We have greenhouses off-site. And we work a lot with clients and do projects. But our retail store is a little over 6 years old now, and we are excited about what we've created and what we've built.
That's so incredible. And what made you decide to open a plant store in Houston? And if you don't mind sharing a couple of the other projects you guys work on as well.
So I was working in corporate America for like 10 years, and Matthew worked for an architectural firm as a designer. And sometime in 2017, we started dreaming a little bit. And one of the big things that we noticed was that there was a gap in Houston. Houston is a ginormous city, and the only place you can get an indoor plant at the time would be, the big box stores. There's a few, but generally it would be an overwhelming task for somebody that's a novice, that has absolutely no idea where to start. Can I put this inside? Can I put this outside? What kind of lighting does it need? What kind of water does it need? And so we wanted to create a boutique style environment that was very welcoming or approachable, that was for the expert, meaning that we have some very nice collector type plants, and it was also for the novice. So if you are new to plants, your very first plant that you're putting indoors. And Houston is a city that there's a lot of, although we have a lot of suburbs in Houston, there's a lot of high rises, lots of townhomes that don't have the opportunity for gardening spaces. And so we saw the gap, and we wanted to fill it. We wanted to fill it with education, being educated on, what's right for you, demystifying the whole idea of like black thumb. And then, creating a community of, people with shared interest for plants and bringing them indoors. So that's why we created the Flora Culture. And mimosas on Saturdays sometimes.
Well, that's a huge plus.
Yes.
And what were a couple of the other projects you guys work on in addition to retail?
So in addition to retail, we do some design projects and styling. We work with some interior designers here in Houston, design firms that work on restaurants. We work on restaurants, some hotels. We do some residential clients. And then we've worked with other designers, sometimes not even from the state. We've worked with some from California and New York on bigger projects. Let's say they're styling. We did one for Architectural Digest. We did a house for the AIA tour here in Houston, which was phenomenal. One of my favorite projects. The homeowner has become a friend because we've worked with her many times on various projects. So really styling a lot of residential clients and corporate clients. Like I said, we have a hospital client, some restaurants, and we have some upcoming projects that are exciting, but not ready to share yet.
Wow, that is so exciting. What don't you guys do?
We don't do like the mow and blow. We don't do a lot of those. So we don't have the capacity. And honestly, it's not really in our scope. We are more thinking about the clients that are intentional with styling. It's not just an afterthought. It's a forefront in their mind. What works in here? What kind of planters? How to style it? All of that.
That is so cool. You guys definitely are so personalized with all of the touches that you do. And I mean, whenever I even walked into your store, I felt that. I was like, this is so exciting. I felt the energy. It really just made me want to buy plants, but also learn more. So I think that's really cool. If you could walk us through your store, what kind of plants do you carry and what kind of plants tend to fly off the shelves first?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for saying that. It really means a lot. You know, when we get these reviews on Google that talks about our space and the way you just explained it, it makes me happy. I'm a person of faith. And when we first got our first space, I walked in and I prayed. I said, I want this to be a place of joy. I want people to walk in and feel peace. They don't have to understand all the reasons why. They don't have to understand all the sweat, tears, and prayers that we put into it. But I wanted that you can escape the world for a little bit, even if it's for 20 minutes while you walk around. I wanted to create a space for that. And so thank you for saying that. What flies off the shelf? Gosh, we are very intentional because, again, we are not the big box store. So we don't have like 50 of all ZZ plants. We do have ZZ plants. We do have easy plants like pothos and sansevierias. But we also try to, I think we have built a reputation for variety and some unique specimens, some collector ones. So if you are that new plant parent, you're getting into that world and you want to start off with the pothos, we have that. If you want to kind of take it a step further and get some more unusual ones, Scindapsus, Exotica, those kinds of things, we have all of those. But then, you know, if you want to do like right now in the store, we have an Aglaonema pictum tricolor that is probably not a very common one to have, but people are, you know, they're flying off the shelves. So it really varies, you know, and also it's like personality. Some people are into ferns. I probably myself personally, I'm not I will, you know, I love them, but indoors, I just struggle with them myself. But then I'll have a client that I'm talking to, like, oh, I've had this fern for 15 years. I'm like, how? You know, what kind of magic? And so it really just depends on the week. But I would say it's kind of hard to say that one particular plant is, you know, it's like choosing your favorite child. Can you say that? I do have some favorite plants, but you know, what flies off the shelf, it really has to do with just the vibe and seasons too, seasonally too. Some things are popping off more than others. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that was such a great comment too. You know, in this industry, one really special thing is everyone is always learning. Even whenever it's from clients you didn't expect to have like 15-year-old ferns or what have you. So that's really awesome. And I really love watching the gardening community grow each year. A lot of people like to begin with houseplants. What houseplants do you recommend for starters?
Starters, the undefeated Sansevieria. Because, I mean, the common name is snake plant, or a different generation would call it the mother-in-law's tongue because it's truly undefeated. My mother-in-law actually likes that joke. She laughs at it. But yes, so no, that's not a negative thing. It's actually a really great thing. So I think they're incredibly easy. The way to care for them is really to neglect them,
Right.
because they don't like to be overwatered, especially indoors. So I think like you'll all probably have more outdoor gardening guests on the show, but
Yeah.
with indoors, it's trickier because now the water's not evaporating as quickly. So somebody that has been incredibly successful outside might not have that success inside. They have to tweak certain things. But going back to Sansevieria, they're incredibly easy, very drought tolerant. You can't really make too many mistakes in regard to like placement. So you can place them at the back of the room with very little light. You can place them right by the window. You can even have them outdoors if you have like a patio. So they are incredibly forgiving. They will give you the most confidence. So if you have a collection, which like I have a collection of Sansevieria, I think I have like 60 different species
Holy
in my house.
smokes.
I know. It's now like a challenge for me to collect every single one that I don't have. So I think, my husband would say it's his collection, but it's really mine. We fight over it. So I think those are easy. Now, some people want something leafier or softer. Then I would say a pothos is always a great place to start. Also pretty forgiving, not quite as drought tolerant as a sansevieria, but they will tell you, they will show their leaves will look sad, and they'll tell you like, hey, girl, let's get on with the watering. So those two, and even some philodendron, like philodendron Brazil, are fantastic because they have a lot of personality with their leaves. I'm a sucker for philodendron Brazil. It's not a very rare plant at all, but they just look like somebody hand painted them, and they trail, they climb. So that's a great one to start with the right amount of light. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, one way I got into houseplants is learning about how houseplants clean our air, which is great. I live in an apartment and I'm constantly worried about, what kind of stuff might be roaming around in the hallways, what have you. So, can you recommend some air cleaning plants for maybe apartment owners or house owners?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. People walk into the store like, I want the plant that cleans the air. And I'm an education person, so I want to like explain so you don't just take my word for it. So let me explain. A few decades ago, NASA did a study, right? And they studied 20 plants. All the plants do the same thing, meaning that let's go to our 5th or 6th grade science. I don't remember. Humans inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Plants receive that carbon dioxide and breathe out, as an easy way to say, oxygen. That's why we have a symbiotic, humans and plants, we have a symbiotic relationship, right? It's a good relationship, and you want plants in your home. Now, going to the NASA study, they only studied 20 plants. Like if you walk into our shop, there's probably like 500 plants,
Wow.
like different varieties. Maybe that's a large number.
That's amazing.
But my points to say is they found that sansevieria do this exchange at night. And so this has now become like the common thing of saying what plants purify the air. All plants purify the air because all plants are doing that exchange. The notable thing is that sansevieria, what I just said, that easy plant, sansevieria do that exchange at nighttime. So people love having that in their homes because while they're sleeping, sansevieria is purifying the air. But to be honest, you would have to have a really significant amount of plants in your space for that to, if we're being scientific, if it's to make everybody feel good, sure, absolutely. That's probably too honest, but basically you would need to have a good amount of plants to really be able to make that difference with the air being purified. But yes, it is a very true thing. It is a very honest thing, but just knowing that all plants do that. So all plants, whatever one's calling to you, whatever one is screaming at your name and screaming out your name when you walk into the store, and you have the light for it and you have the capacity, you have to think about like lifestyle. Like, do you have pets that are going to eat certain plants? Probably shouldn't have certain ones that are very toxic. And then you have to think about like kids. Is this a pokey plant? My 4-year-old absolutely loves the pokiest ones, the better. She's a little thrill seeker. So we get all of those. That's not a deterrent for us. But yes, to answer your question, all plants purify the air, but some do it at night. And then also, I think that NASA should do another study here in 2026 with a larger variety. It's so limiting that they did it with 20, which I'm glad that they did, and that's what they did at the time. My hope is that they have a renewed study and they study way more plants so that we have more information about this particular exchange, this particular topic.
Yeah, and I feel like houseplants just keep getting more popular every single year too. So that would be super beneficial. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about fertilizer. A lot of plant parents are intimidated by it, especially new plant parents. They're like, what is NPK? I totally get it. I didn't know before I started working here either. So how do you explain the basics of fertilizing houseplant owners for the first time buyer?
So I will say that we recommend it, especially for indoor plants, because there's no external way to get fertilizer. Like outdoors in your gardening, even if you don't fertilize, you should. But even if you don't, there's still like debris from like leaves, which eventually degrade into the soil. But indoor plants, you need, it's food. Fertilizer is food. And now some plants can still survive, right? There's a difference between like survival and thriving. And so some plants will survive without fertilizer. But if you really want your plants to thrive and to be happy, it's just, do better with feeding them fertilizer. Now, I've also noticed sometimes when I'm talking to a client, a guest comes in and they're saying, I've done everything right with my plants. I asked them about their watering. I asked them about the sunlight. And I'm thinking like, gosh, everything sounds right. And then I'm like, the one last question, I'm like, what kind of fertilizer are you using? Are you using a type of soil or fertilizer? And they tell me, and it's usually one particular brand, which we will not name here, but it's sold at the big box stores and it's very popular. And it almost always is the cause of problems. So I think also the type of fertilizer and having that education on organic fertilizer is very, very important. And so this is where it's a very easy segue for me to say you should try the product that we carry, which is y'all's product, Microlife, because you have the years to back it up. You have the science to back it up and the knowledge and the experience. And so that's why it's really the only brand we carry in both of our stores.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So what's the biggest challenge you see when houseplant owners run into whenever they first begin?
The biggest challenge? I think it's like knowing where to start. I would say that's the hardest part. And then the common mistakes. Number one reason why people kill their indoor plants, overwatering, people really underestimate, and really the sunlight, not understanding how much light plants need. So underestimating how much plants, the truth is that all plants need light. Now, over time, certain plants have sort of adjusted to being, some people ask me, can I have it in my office with a fluorescent light? I never say yes to that. However, listen, the person that cuts my hair, he has a plant, a pothos that is trailing and living her best life, and there's not one window to be found. So I will never make that recommendation though, because again, science, you need photosynthesis, you need sunlight. Plants need sunlight. Some can do it less, but I think this is probably the biggest struggle is underestimating. And everybody wants to showy plants. Everybody wants the fiddly fig. I'm like, she is drama. Walk away from her. Or they show me a spot. It's a north-facing window. I'm like, please don't. So, but I've been proven wrong, meaning that I walk into a client's house and they have a fiddle that they've had for 10 years and it's, the opposite end of a window. And so, plants are living things. They can do whatever they want. But the general rules, I would say, still apply. And I would say it's just adjusting, especially from your listeners, people that have outdoor plants, underestimating what it's like for indoor, because you're watering probably the same capacity in Houston. Gosh, in the summertime, you can water 2-3 times a week and that'd be perfectly fine. If you do 2-3 times in 1 week for a plant, you're definitely murdering the plant indoors. So just those, I would say, for the person that is really successful outdoors and trying to start an indoor collection, those would be the things that they would struggle with the most is adjusting to the amount of light. Sunlight is overall just encompassing. Even if there's a giant tree, there's still sunlight piercing through. However, if you have it indoors, there's a lot more variables, meaning like the windows, there's screens on the windows. Even though it doesn't seem like it, that's just how a lot of glass for windows are built now. Where it expels some UV light. And so which is good for your energy bill and for other things. But so it's just different. My point to say it's just the amount of light outside versus inside different. Even if you have a full south facing windows, like that's what we have, it's still just not the same.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you recommend, this is kind of a random question I haven't been able to ask somebody until now. Do you recommend giving any of your houseplants a little bit of outdoor time if they don't get that sunlight?
Sure. If you have it, absolutely. Yes. If you have a home and certain plants, I mean, we have such a large collection. There's absolutely no way that we could do it.
Right, true.
But like, our fiddle, maybe in the spring at our old house, we used to live and we had a bunch of outdoor space. In the springtime, we would bring her out. But again, it's not entirely necessary because they will adjust, they will acclimate to an environment, so they will learn how to be in that environment. That's the thing. I would always struggle with my nemesis plant, calatheas. They're beautiful, they're striking, I love them, I'm a sucker for them, but I would always struggle, meaning that they would always get spider mites every single time. They're always getting spider mites. No matter what I do, I'll put it in a bathroom by itself with tons of light, tons of moisture, all the things, and they just don't do well. And I remember my husband the one saying to me, he said, babe, plants are meant to be outside, and we have convinced some of them to come inside, but some of them don't want to, and you have to honor that. You have to respect nature, and so now when I buy calatheas, I treat them like a cut flower, and I'm like, I will love you for as long as you let me, even if it's 3 months or 6 months. And the said calathea, I've thrown it outside literally once. I got so frustrated because I treated it and it would recover and be happy, and it's sad again, and so I threw it outside and it was living its best life. So some plants, we have to honor that. We have to honor that not every plant wants to be inside. We have clients that they have a restaurant. I want a big olive tree. It's not going to do okay. Well, I'm going to put a skylight above this ceiling, and I'm like, still no. So as long as kind of, you go into the mindset of like, I will replace it. It might live for months, maybe a long time, but generally certain plants just refuse. They are like, absolutely not, and they have a right to, because they're living things. So
totally. I had a little fungal gnat problem recently, and I tried to figure out how to take care of that. And I just took a couple of houseplants outside for a couple of days, and then I was like, okay, I want you back inside. Yeah. So I was like, am I hurting them or helping? So that's a really helpful answer.
Well, and another thing too, you're not hurting them as long as they're not getting, meaning that, for example, a fiddly fig, it can take full sun. They're the top in the forest setting. They can take absolute full sun. Now, if it's been indoors for a long time and you take it outside, it will absolutely shock the plant because it's too stark of a difference. So if you do decide to take them outside, which you can, maybe put it in a shady area initially, or put it where the sun is not just pounding on it, because literally 20 minutes outside in Houston, oh yeah, she's going to be fried. Yeah. So just so that they can acclimate, put it outside at nighttime, so it sort of acclimates to the sun rising and slowly sort of realizes, okay, we're in a different place now. So they learn. So in the same way they learn to come inside, you have to sort of transition them to go outside as well, so you're not hurting them.
Yeah, you really treat them like the living beings they are, and so that's so good to hear. So what plants do you personally love but have a hard time convincing customers to try?
I feel like I'm a pretty honest person, even at the store, and so let me think. I feel like that question is more of, what plans do I tell customers not to buy and they still want to buy?
Yeah, tell us.
I think fiddles are so drama queens. They're striking, they're beautiful, they're in a lot of design magazines, and I prep people all the time. They need all the light, like they need the light touching them, and so I'm like, please don't get it. But if they're committed, they let me see, what are the plans I can't convince? I don't know. I don't know what plans, because that's part of the nature of our store is listening to people. What do they want? So if somebody's coming in, they want a lush tropical garden, I'm not going to pull a euphorbia for them, or like a classic looking euphorbia that looks like a cactus, or anything in the cacti family, because that's not what they came for. So really understanding their needs. And that's why, yes, if I heard them say, I want a tropical rainforest in here, and I recommended something that looks like a desert, then probably they would say no. But then that's part of, like I said, listening, having good listening skills, understanding their needs, and making the right recommendations. So again, knowledge, and then knowing your people.
I love it. How have you seen the Houston plant community grow since you guys opened? And are there clubs, events, or a social scene around your community you've grown through your stores and stuff?
Okay, to answer your question, when we opened, we established our business in May of 2018. And at the time, we looked high and low to see if there's any other plant shops. Again, this is why we started our business, because we felt like there was a gap. There was a gap between, you either have the big box stores or the big garden centers that are incredibly overwhelming. And so we wanted to create this boutique style store. And there wasn't one at the time when we opened for indoor plants specifically. And so it was relatively new. And this was pre the pandemic. And so after we opened our brick and mortar in November of 2019, our first brick and mortar store in November of 2019. So we'd been at it for about a year and a half now at this point and had some clients, but first time to open our brick and mortar store, it was new. It was a new concept really to Houston. It was a new idea. Matthew and I used our savings. We didn't even try to get a bank loan because sometimes with banks, it's like, show me an example of this. I'm like, New York? Right. California, but not Houston. Texas, we're kind of like behind a little bit sometimes in regard to design because, again, focusing on, curating a space that had ceramics because we have vessels. So if you walk into our store, we will pot the plant for you. There's no charge if you buy the plant and pot from us. We'll drill a hole in the pot if there's not a hole because we want you to be successful. Well, that's another thing. It's like, I'm just going to pick up this plant and there's not a drainage hole. You're watering it and you're creating the swimming pool. Of course, the plant's going to die. So we have all the things in our store that are available to our guests. Like I said, those services are available and the knowledge part. So when we started, it was pretty new. We're excited to have, been at the forefront of that. Are we saying it's all of Texas? I don't know. But Houston, for sure, we didn't find. And Austin. We kind of looked. Should we go to Austin? And so we have sort of created like events and workshops. So we do quite a bit of workshops, at least one public one, because again, we want to focus on the education side of things and the knowledge side of things. But since then, it's built this whole community. We have gatherings, we have, block parties. We go to schools. We've worked with University of Houston quite a few times. We have schools come in. Montessori schools are always coming into our spaces. So and then we go out to obviously other businesses and collaborate with other brands. It's taken time, but we are grateful for just the plant love and in the way we have sort of like curated with, organic products, healthy products, a variety of plants, those kinds of things. And also, like I said, education is very important because knowledge is power and knowledge gives confidence too. So since then, yes, now like we will announce a workshop and people snag those seats really quickly. They're always small, intimate. We try not to do them too large because we want to create that environment of, an approachable environment. So we are grateful. We're grateful for our regulars now that have been with us for years.
You guys definitely walk the walk and talk the talk, so I really appreciate that. So let's talk about plant problems. If somebody were to come into the store and say their plant looks sad and yellowing, what's your diagnostic process of handling that question?
So I almost always ask a few follow-up questions because a yellowing plant could be overwatering. Mm-hmm. Underwatering. It could also mean that not enough light. There's so many things, or not enough fertilizer, and there's not enough nutrients. So that's a big thing. So I ask a few follow-up questions. How often are you watering? Can you show me with photos, like what kind of windows do you have? South facing, north facing? Sometimes people don't know. I'm like, does the sun rise in through the window? Do you have overall light in your space throughout the day? Those kinds of things. And so just to try to like fine tune, like how often they're watering. Is it an overwatering problem? Is it an underwatering problem? I mean, you can usually see from looking at the plant itself sometimes. If it's a picture that they brought in, sometimes it's harder, but we try to process of elimination, like I said. And it's usually with that I can kind of find out what what might be the potential issue. But again, like I said, it's not a cure-all for everything. Plants are living things, and you might be doing every single thing right, and they're still struggling. So having that peace of mind that sometimes it's okay to retire. Some plants can retire. We had an event in October. It's a plant funeral. It was to show, like, for real, like a funeral. We had like graveyards and stuff, and so you could bring your old plant in, and you get a 20% discount to get a new one. But it was basically to normalize that sometimes plants die, and it's okay. We're gonna celebrate life, and we're gonna celebrate retirement.
That is beautiful. What a full circle moment you guys have. If you do one again, I will be there.
Like, I will be there with my collection.
Oh, you're so funny. Okay, so what is something the fertilizer and the plant nutrition industry could do better to make things less confusing for everyday plant owners?
This is a hard question because I'm going to one answer is going to contradict the other, meaning that I think your industry, microlife, and really just the fertilizing industry, simplifying it for a regular consumer. Now, because most people don't understand all the science, all the background information. This is years of work that's been put into it. And so that's why I'm saying people want a simple answer, but it's difficult for a scientist to put, to simplify it. I tell people which answer depends on what kind of answer you want. Do you want the science? Let's talk to Matthew. If you want me to give you some simple answers, talk to me. So I do the work. I do a lot of workshops, and I'm like, it's fun, it's approachable. But then there's our guests that want that very, very deep knowledge and the science part and all the names, and that's Matthew. Matthew leads those workshops. I'm like, I bring in the fun and laughter, and so it's not necessarily that it's contradicting, but I would say for your industry, simplifying it. How do you make it simple for somebody to understand what it does and what the benefits are? Not everybody understands the science of needing more nitrogen, especially with indoor plants. We sell in our store the 713 cocktail, and it's fantastic because of the level of nitrogen that's in that particular mixture. And so again, like I said, it's easy for me to sell because I just talk to people in a very as simplified as possible, saying, just like we need vitamins, or when we eat, we need certain nutrients. It's the same thing with plants. So that would be a simple message, right? And then, do you want more? Let's bring in science and say all the things about, why this certain component is important, how many years, and then the ratios, which that's what y'all have done. So I think this goes back to a topic I like to talk about, which is called opinion leaders. When I was in grad school, I studied the media effects on moms and their choice to breastfeed or not. That was my nerd moment, and I love research. And one of the things I found was that women in particular, but I would say my research was on women. But women tend to go to opinion leaders, meaning that they're not looking at the media. They're not looking at newspaper articles. Moms are going to other moms to find out information. Moms are going to other moms. That's what's called an opinion leader. They trust their decision. They trust their experience. They trust that they've been through the fire and they can tell me. So then I don't need to now do all of that research myself because I don't have the time for it. Right. So if one mom feels like, oh, that gives that confidence that you got it. Don't let anyone shame you for breastfeeding your child. It's in the same way. I'm tying it now to this at our store. People buy Microlife easily from us because we show that confidence. We don't carry other brands because I don't know what they've done. I don't know how much research they have. I don't know how much experience and all the testing that they've done. I can very confidently say you can use Microlife the cocktails that we sell is mostly for indoor plants, but people are like, can I use this on my vegetable garden? Absolutely. What if I overuse? What if I pour too much? I'm like, well, you just wasted product, but no harm. And so those kinds of things, that's why I would say our shop and our employees are the opinion leaders in this regard. So you need those opinion leaders to simplify the narrative, to simplify the education. And if they want to have more information, then they can find that. If they want to know more of the science, just tell me, is it good or not? Should I use it for my plants or not? Yes or no? I trust you. All right, let's go. Bought.
I love that. You have been such a joy to have on this podcast. You're so funny. It sounds like you and your husband make an incredible team. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find your stores, your beautiful stores, and where can people find you online?
We have 2 stores. One is by not far, like half a mile from the Galleria, 3100 Chimney Rock. We're right by a French bakery. So go next door, get some coffee and a croissant and come peruse. And then our other location is in Midtown, right at the corner of Elgin and Milam. So very easy to find. So, and then obviously our website, our social media, thefloraculture.com.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.